Up to this point, we've seen how we can integrate data into a view using directives like ng-init and how we can perform data binding and even with an ng-click, handle our order by without any real JavaScript. But a lot of this really wouldn't be hard-coded, of course, and for instance, we might make an AJAX call to get our customers, and I wouldn't want to put this type of code right here directly in the view. So what we're going to do is refactor this, and we're going to create a controller. And then a little bit later, we'll go ahead and marry the controller to the view so it knows about it. But for now, let's get started by adding a script block down here. And in this script block, we're going to create a simple function I'm going to call customers controller. And this is going to have the scope injected into it. All right, so that'll get us started. Now that's as simple as it is to create a controller in AngularJS. Now, it's not actually what I do in the real world, but this will help us get started. We'll refactor this as we move along in this module. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the customers that we have here. I'm going to grab that out and get rid of the ng-init. Normally, I use ng-init for one of two reasons. Number one, for prototyping. It's a great way to just get your view started. Number two, if I do need to initialize one of my properties with some data, then you could use ng-init just to give it that starter value. But what I'm going to do here is we're going to take our scope. Now, again, this will be passed in automatically at runtime by Angular. And I'm going to add a new property called customers. Let me add my semicolon there. And I'll go ahead and leave it on one line just so it doesn't take up much space for now. But now my scope object has a customers property. Now that means that this little bit of code right here in the directive can actually bind to that property. In fact, you don't say scope.customers. You just take the name of the property and just use it directly. So these properties all down here will work and we're pretty much ready to go. Now, for instance, if I wanted to come in and maybe below this table, maybe we want to add a span, and in the span we say total customers. Well, then I could come in and say customers dot length, and we could actually write that value out dynamically. And so what's going to happen now is we move the data into the controller, and we'll refactor this even more later, but for now this will get us started. And that kind of cleans up that piece, but we still have this piece right here, and I really wouldn't want that in my view. There's a little bit of logic, I would argue, there with the not reversing things. So I'm going to grab that out. And we're going to come down and we're going to make a function that when the ng-click is invoked, we're going to call into the controller function, and then it will handle setting these properties in reverse and things like that. So we'll say scope dot, and we're sorting right now, so let's just call it do sort. And this is going to be assigned to a function that's going to take the, let's call it prop name actually. And now what we'll do is paste that in. Now what I want to do is back up here in the order by, we're binding to some sort by property. Well, now we don't have that any longer because we took it out of here, and we'll take all these out as well. So what we need to do is put that on the scope. So I'll say scope.sortBy equals, and then instead of name, it's going to be whatever they pass in for prop name. So let me clean this up just a little bit. And then reverse would also be scope.reverse, and then it would be the not scope.reverse. All right, and there we have it. So now we have a do sort. So let's go up to here, and now we would say we want to sort by name. And then I'll just cut and paste that down, and we can reuse this. So we'll do that in just a moment. And then we'll fill in our blanks here. We'll do city, order total, and joined. Okay, so now we have a controller. We have our scope, and we have some data. Now, if you wanted to maybe assign a default sort property, we could even come up and say scope.sort by, and we could give it name if we wanted. And then we could do scope.reverse, and we could say maybe false, which means it'll do kind of an ascending by default. And so now we're ready to go. We have a controller. The scope will be injected, which is really the glue between the view and the controller as far as data binding, handling events, and those types of things. And then we now have our data, which is our customers, and we have a do sort, which will be used to pass in the property name and then control what property we sort by, which will be used right in this area here with our order by filter. Now, it won't actually work right now because we need to hook in the controller up here into our view somehow. And that's actually going to be the subject of the next section. So I'll hold off on that. But what I do want to do is refactor this a little bit. Normally, I'm not going to be putting my controllers right here in the web page. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And let's come on over to our sidebar here, and I'm going to add a new folder. And I'm going to call it App. And then in App, I'm going to make a folder called Controllers. Now, where you put your controllers and factories and services and other pieces of your AngularJS application really depends. It's very subjective. I'm going to go with a convention-based approach here and just put controllers in a folder called controllers. That's a pretty obvious place. So we'll create a new file called customers controller. And then I'll just paste in this function for now. And let me fix that up just a little bit. Okay, so now we're set up to come on in and dynamically sort using the controller, assign some properties such as sort by reverse and customers, and then in the view, we're going to be able to bind to those. Now, the last thing I need to do, of course, is we need to add a script reference. So let's go ahead and go into App, and we'll go into Controllers, Customers Controller, and there we go. So the next thing we're going to learn is, all right, so we have a controller here, and we know about the scope now, but how do we actually hook that into the view?